Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers to celebrity memoirs, news, business, and self-development. Every month, members get 1 credit to pick any title, plus 2 Audible originals from a monthly selection, and access to daily news digests from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, as well as guided meditation programs. Between a full-time job in IT and a full-time job in podcasting, it gets harder and harder to sit down and read the books I'm interested in. This is where Audible comes in. I can listen on my daily commute, relaxing, or while out running errands and still get in the books I've been wanting to get into. You can download titles and listen offline anytime, anywhere. The app is free and can be installed on all smartphones and tablets. Now you can try Audible risk-free with a special 30-day free trial by visiting audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. That's audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. Don't let your busy life get in the way of that great book you've been wanting to read. Go get your free trial of Audible today. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. This is Geoffrey, and we've talked about many times before that I experience problems and struggles with my mental health, and really without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy does work. It's helped for me, but what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, or you're not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's really time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles, and it's time to start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is a customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And there's a special offer to Nerdery and Murdery listeners. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. That's betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast.
You're listening to the sweet and sensual sounds of Nerdery and Murdery.
Seriously, you're an idiot. Welcome to episode 105 of Nerdery and Murdery.
Big 105. I'm Zig with your nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your murdery. Welcome to the ups and the downs, the highs and the lows, and the nerd and the murd. And Zig, I will let you take over on the nerdery side of the house.
Awesome. This is one I've been wanting to talk about for a while. It is 5 adult animation films you should see.
All right.
So these are animated films that are not necessarily for kiddies.
Hence adult.
Yes. Some of them, kind of are, but the first one is Gandahar, and in the United States it was released as Light Years. Interesting thing about this film, you actually get the voice of Teller from Penn and Teller. Penn and Teller are in it.
Right.
Gandahar is a 1987 French animated science fiction fantasy film written and directed by René Laloy, based on a Jean-Pierre Andrevon's 1969 novel Les Hommes Machines contre Gandahar, or The Machine Men versus Gandahar. The peaceful people of Gandahar are suddenly attacked by an army of automated men known as the Men of Metal. They march through the village and kidnap their victims by turning them to stone. The resulting statues are collected and then transferred to the base. At the capital city of Jasper, the Council of Women orders Sylvan to investigate. On his journey, he encounters the Deformed, a race of mutant beings who were accidentally created via genetic experiments by Gandahar's scientists. Despite the resentment, they're also threatened by the Men of Metal and offer to help Sylvain. Sylvain later saves Ariel, a Gandaharian woman, and together they discover the Men of Metal's base, where the frozen Gandaharians are taken through a large portal and are seemingly assimilated into more Men of Metal. The two stow away on a nearby boat, which heads towards the middle of the ocean, where they encounter Metamorphosis, a giant brain. Sylvan and Ariel are captured and confronted by Metamorphosis, who tells them that although the Men of Metal believe that he is their leader, he did not create them nor order their attack. He states that he does not want to see Gandahar fall and that he needs time to figure out the connection between him and the Men of Metal. He then returns Sylvain and Ariel to Jasper, where they learn that Metamorphosis, like the Deformed, was also an experiment by the Gandaharian scientists. Due to his rapid growth and increasingly violent behavior, he was abandoned in the ocean. Sylvain is ordered to kill Metamorphosis with a special syringe. Sylvain returns to Metamorphosis, who maintains his innocence but reveals the Men of Metal come from the future via a portal Sylvain saw earlier. He then urges Sylvain to kill him in 1,000 years, as the syringe would have no effect on him now. A skeptical Sylvain agrees, and Metamorphosis puts him into stasis. That's basically a breakdown of how this story plays out. It's very esoteric, very French. The animation in it is wonderful. But it's like a beach in the south of France. There are a lot of boobs. I think just to have them. Whoever the animator was apparently liked to draw them, so they're everywhere. Even on the mutant men, the metal men, they're very reminiscent of the automatons from the Black Hole. Very similar design, and also sort of almost a Mandalorian effect on them. The voice acting is really good. You got Glenn Close, again, Penn and Teller, John Shea, Jennifer Grey, George Wilson, Christopher Plummer, Earl Hammond, and Sheila McCarthy. It's just one of those things that I saw it when I was kind of young, and it surprised me. When I saw it, I was like, oh wow, they're again boobs, because I was like 12, 13 when I saw it. But it was more than that. It was the story that kind of came in and gripped me, because I didn't know what it was about. Oh, hey, it's an animated science fiction film. I should rent it and watch it. And it became one of my favorite movies back in the day, especially for animation. See, the French were doing a lot of animation back then. Whereas we kind of centered on the Japanese stuff here as of late. The French are still doing a lot of animation. It's a little more esoteric and hard sci-fi, as it were, or sci-fi fantasy. The English language version was released here by Miramax, and the translation revision done by noted science fiction author Isaac Asimov. This is actually one of the last things he did. The English title is a translation, not the original title. But the original tagline was Gandahar, the Light Years, which was what it was on the French poster. So they just called the English language version of it Light Years. The English version does not contain most of Yared's soundtrack from the original version of the film. New music was produced for certain sequences in the English language version. These new pieces were created by the combined efforts of Jack Mabey, Bob Jewett, and Jim Klein. Certain scenes were edited for sexual content. The scene where Ariel and Sylvain are in the nest. In the uncut version, Sylvain is shown removing his shirt. Later, he and Ariel are shown lying nude in the nest at night, seemingly after having been intimate with one another. I want to say the version I saw shows him taking his shirt off, but I mean, that's all they cut. It was kind of weird because, I mean, It's a cartoon. How bad could it be? But there's a lot of, I don't want to say body horror, but weird, the mutant people are a strange collection of parts and pieces, and they don't really work right, but they still are able to survive and move around. It's also about acceptance, because the mutant people were shunned, and it turns out they kind of helped save the world. Because when he comes back in 1,000 years, the only people left who haven't been converted into metal men are the mutants. They're the only ones that were able to form a resistance. It really is a beautiful movie. Have you ever seen Light Years?
No, not at all.
You haven't seen this one at all?
Uh-uh.
It's a great one. But again, it is fairly esoteric. It's got a French feel to it, or a European feel to it, but it's a really great movie. It's one of those ones that you really should get out there and see. If nothing else, the artwork is incredible. It's akin to some of the stuff that Bakshi was doing back then. Ralph Bakshi, the noted adult animator. I have one of his films in this list as well. The second film is Star Chaser, The Legend of Orin. I know you've seen this one.
I don't recall it.
It's a 1985 animated space opera film directed and produced by Steve Hahn and written by Geoffrey Scott. It was originally released in 3D by Atlantic Releasing. Star Chaser, The Legend of Orin was one of the best animated movies to mix traditional and computer animation, as well as one of the first to be released in 3D. In the future, on the planet named Trinia, human slaves have lived underground for millennia, mining crystals for a god named Zygon and his robot minions. One day, Orin, a young miner, finds a jeweled sword embedded in the rock. Hops, grandfather of Orin's girlfriend, Elan, recognizes the sword and gives it his life to save Orin and keep the sword a secret. When Orin later takes the sword into his hands, it ascends into the air and buries itself into the cavern floor. A projection of an old man appears from the blade, telling those present above the caverns is a magnificent universe that the people may find. The blade then disappears, leaving only the hilt. Forced to leave, Orin's young, blind brother, Cahill, behind, Orin and Elan set out to discover the universe and find the blade to the sword. Chased by Zygon's robots, they emerge in an industrial complex where they meet Zygon, who reveals the face of a human man beneath his mask. Zygon strangles Elan to death, but Orin escapes his fate when Zygon is distracted by the sword hilt. When Zygon's robots accidentally fire on a crystal deposit, Zygon presumes Orin dead, and the resulting explosion and cave-in. Orin digs a tunnel to the surface of Trinia, where he is later captured by mandroids, a group of decaying, half-organic, half-robotic beings who intend to tear him apart and use his body parts to replace their own. Unexpectedly, his sword's hilt produces what is apparently an invisible blade, killing two of the mandroids and helping Orin escape. Orin subsequently runs into a human smuggler named Dag Debrimi, who takes Orin, whom he dubs Water Snake, to his outrageous tale about human slaves in the mines, along on his journey to smuggle crystals. Eventually, Dag seizes a load of crystals from a hovering freighter, but is driven away by Zagon and his robotic guards. During the fight, Dag seizes a fembot named Silica and uses it as a shield from laser blasts. Subsequently reprogrammed by Dag, Silica becomes attached to him, and at the same time a mysterious starfly appears and attaches itself to Orin. Dag flies his spaceship, the Star Chaser, to a city called Toga Toga on the planet Bordegon, where he abandons Orin and gives Silica to a slave auctioneer. Orin wanders through the city trying to find a clue that will lead him to the location of the hilt's blade. After meeting a fortune teller who tells him to visit a place called Nuvoluna, Orin sees Silica offered for sale, whereupon he offers a high price to buy her. When the auctioneer finds that Orin has no knowledge of local currency, he takes Orin's freedom in addition to Silica's. But Dag's, moved on by his own conscience, frees them. Later, Dag and Orin visit the home of two desert-dwelling merchants, to whom Dag sells the stolen crystals. Because Zygon has placed a price on Orin's head, the merchants offer to buy Orin as well. but Dag refuses. And then they take off in the Star Chaser and eventually head back to their planet. This film was released in the United States by Atlantic, releasing on November 22nd, 1985, spending at least 17 days in theaters. It made 1.6 million in its opening weekend and 3.3 million overall, making it number 6 in the box office. This film did not fare well in South Korea, where animation production took place. Star Chaser: The Legend of Warren was released on VHS and Laserdisc in March 25th, 1986 by Paramount Home Videos. The New York Times described the film as such a brazen ripoff of George Lucas's Star Wars that you might think lawyers would have been called in. Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert both gave the film a thumbs down, as they both found the movie uninspired and felt also the film was a ripoff of Star Wars. I disagree. I love this film. I remember watching it over at Don's apartment.
And I've never heard of this film.
You might check the. It has a weird title that's forgettable. Star Chaser: The Legend of Warren. You might remember the ship. It was kind of a triangular or sort of pyramid design with two nacelles that went out the side that twisted in like 360 degrees. I'm pretty sure we have seen this movie together, but again, the name is kind of forgettable. It's a lot of fun. I loved this movie. I don't understand the vitriol against it. Yes, the smuggler was a bit of a ripoff of Han Solo, but he was playing a cowboy character, a smuggler character, an anti-hero. They all kind of ring like Han Solo, because that's what he was. I like the fembot. She was a lot of fun because she eventually develops sentience and becomes the smartest member of the crew. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. In March 2012, Riley and Pictures acquired the rights to develop the 1985 3D animated film Star Chaser: The Legend of Warren into a live-action motion picture produced by Riley and Pictures, partner Jonathan Saba and Juan Iglesias, but nothing's ever come of it. My next film in this set is Fire and Ice by Ralph Bakshi. Now, when I started doing this list, I thought I'm going to have to just do a bunch of Ralph Bakshi stuff, but we may do some more Ralph Bakshi in the future because there's several of these examples that I'd like to cite. But for this one, I wanted to go with Fire and Ice just because it fits these thematically a little better. So Fire and Ice, you've seen Fire and Ice, right?
Nope.
Fire and Ice is a 1983 American animated epic dark fantasy adventure film directed by Ralph Bakshi. The film, a collaboration between Ralph Bakshi and Frank Frazetta, was distributed by 20th Century Fox, which also distributed Bakshi's 1977 film Wizards. It features based on characters co-created by Bakshi and Frazetta, were made using the process of rotoscoping, in which scenes were shot in live action and traced onto animated cells. The screenplay was written by Jerry Conway and Roy Thomas, both of whom had written Conan stories for Marvel Comics. The background painter was James Gurney, and the author and artist of Dinotopia illustrated novels. Iconic American painter Thomas Kincaid also worked on the backgrounds to various scenes. Peter Chung, the creator of Aeon Flux, was a layout artist. So the story goes, before we start with the story, let's just go on that group of creators. So you had Frank Frazetta, and a lot of the stills in this film, where you'll see the Lone Ranger on his horse, look like they're taken right out of a Frank Frazetta painting. Of course, Bakshi's animated rotoscoping style is apparent. You got Peter Chung, who created Aeon Flux, Thomas Kincaid, who did some of the backgrounds. as well as James Gurney, who did Dinotopia. The backgrounds in this are incredible. Probably some of the best stuff uh, I've ever seen. So from their citadel, Ice Peak, the evil queen Juliana and her son Necron send forth a wave of glaciers that forces humanity to retreat south towards the equator. Necron sends a delegation to firekeep the volcanic citadel of King Jarul, ostensibly to request the king's surrender. In truth, the Ice Queen is orchestrated as a ruse so that her subhuman troops can abduct Jarul's beautiful daughter, Princess Tigra, and Julian feels that Necron should take her as a bride to produce an heir. Tigra escapes her captors and comes upon a young warrior named Larn, the only survivor of a village destroyed by Necron's glaciers. The two grow close, but they become separated when Larn is attacked by a monstrous giant squid, and Necron's subhumans recapture Tigra. She briefly escapes again, but runs into the witch R'Lel and her son Atwa, who intend to use her as a bargaining chip for incurring Necron's favor. However, the subhumans simply kill them and take Tigra to Ice Peak. Necron refuses to marry Tigra in spite of his mother's plan, but keeps the princess as a hostage. While looking for Tigra, Larn encounters Darkwolf. A mysterious masked warrior pursues a personal vendetta against Necron and Juliana. While Darkwolf holds off Necron's horde, Larn continues his search and comes upon Royala's remains, which briefly reanimate and tell him how to find the princess. At the same time, Jarul sends his son, Prince Taro, to Necron to bargain for Tigra's release. With Larn as a stowaway on their ship, Taro and his emissaries reach Ice Peak. Necron refuses to release Tigra and insults her, including Taro to attack him using his magic. Necron forces the prince and his delegation to kill each other. Larn infiltrates the ice fortress but fails to retrieve Tigra and is rescued by Darkwolf. They travel to Firekeep to inform Jarul, who decides to give them time to penetrate Ice Peak. Eventually they go back to Ice Peak and rescue it. They ride these things called Dragon Hawks, which are pterosaurs. The what they call the subhumans are actually they look like Neanderthals. It turns out Darkwolf is actually half Neanderthal, half regular human. That's why he always wears a mask. It's just a really brilliant idea, especially with the using the moving glaciers as a weapon, because Necron can control the glaciers and make them move forward. He has basically ice powers. And of course the Fire Kingdom is built around a volcano, and so there's this lovely lush jungle under it. It's just a really cool flick. I've seen it several times. Matter of fact, when I was putting this together, I sat down and watched it again, and I forgot just how good some of these background paintings and things are. So the idea of making this, by 1982, fantasy films had proven to be considerably successful at the box office, including The Beastmaster, which we've discussed before, and Conan the Barbarian. And Bakshi had a desire to work with the illustrator Frank Frazetta. Bakshi received $1.2 million to finance Fire and Ice from some of the same investors who invested in American Pop. And 20th Century Fox again agreed to distribute the film because Wizards had done pretty well for them. But Fire and Ice was the most action-oriented story Bakshi had directed up until this point. So he went ahead and used the rotoscope because it gave him the ability to do some nice work, and they were able to use some of the models that Frazetta had used for his painting. Because he would have people pose and sort of semi his people with plastic swords or whatnot, and he would take a photograph of that, and that's what he would paint off of. Well, they went ahead and used some of the same models that Frazetta used, the life models, for the rotoscoping. So it really does read like a Frank Frazetta painting come to life. So it's got a very D&D sort of Frank Frazetta, Conan the Barbarian feel to it. course, you had Peter Chung and Thomas Kincaid and James Gurney all doing a bunch of the layouts and backgrounds, so it made it pop. Chung strongly admired Bakshi and Francetta's work and animated his sequences on film, were simultaneously working while he was also working for the Walt Disney Company. Janet Maslin of the New York Times wrote, "If you love comic books but can't bear the unnecessarily bother of turning pagers, Fire and Ice is for you," because it does. It looks like a comic book come to life. In 2010, Robert Rodriguez announced that he would direct a live-action remake of the film. In fact, she stated that he did not want any involvement with the film, but he agreed to license the rights to Rodriguez. The deal closed shortly after Franzetta's death. Excuse me. And on December 18th, 2014, Sony Pictures Entertainment acquired the film rights to the live-action remake version of the film to be directed by Rodriguez. It has basically been in development hell ever since then. I would like to see this. I loved Rodriguez's take on Conan. I thought it was brilliant. A lot of people didn't, but I would much rather have Jason Momoa than Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm curious to see what Rodriguez can do with this. But again, it's kind of in development hell, so maybe a while before we see this. But again, if you really, really like Frank Franzetta's work and Ralph Bakshi's stuff, if you haven't seen this already, you should go out and see it. I want to say it's on Tubi. A lot of the stuff you can go out and see on a lot of the free sites right now. I saw Light Years. In prepping for this episode, I went ahead and rewatched Light Years, Star Chaser: The Legend of Orrin, which the kids all sat down and watched. They love that. And then, of course, this Fire and Ice. The next film is Sausage Party. Sausage Party is a 2016 adult computer animated black comedy film directed by Conrad Vernon and Greg Tierman and written by Kyle Hunter, Ariel Sharif, Seth Rogen, and Evan Goldberg, from a story by Rogen, Goldberg, and Jonah Hill. The film follows an anthropomorphic sausage who lives in a supermarket and discovers the truth about what happens when groceries are purchased. He goes on a journey with his friends to escape their fate while also facing a lunatic and malicious douche who wants to kill him. It's actually literally a douche. Rogen has said that he worked for 8 years to get the film made, but the content worried most film studios. Nothing that film came from an innocent place. Rogen stated what it would be like if our food had feelings. We very quickly realized it would be fucked up. Goldberg revealed the project in IndieWire in July of 2010, stating it was top secret super project. Initially, IndieWire was skeptical the project was real and not a hoax on Goldberg's part, which Evan Goldberg is kind of known for doing. But Jonah Hill independently confirmed to MTV News that he was working on an R-rated 3D animated film. Goldberg and executive producer James Weaver said that they had specific targets: Disney and Pixar films, which they had ripped apart. Goldberg said, "We just kind of taking all the conventions of children's movies and making them disgusting and insane." The film's animation was handled by Canada-based Nitrogen Studios. It is the first computer animated film to be rated R by the Motion Picture Association of America. The film's rough cut premiered on March 14th, 2016 at South by Southwest, followed by its general theatrical release in the United States on August 12th, 2016 by Columbia Pictures. The film received generally positive reviews, though. They praised its animation, voice acting, and humor, though some criticized a large amount of swearing. It grossed $141.3 million against a budget of $19 million, so it did pretty well, become the highest grossing R-rated animated film at the time, until it was surpassed by Demon Slayer, Mugen Train in 2020. Sorry. So have you seen Sausage Party?
No, I haven't, but they're either making a sequel to it or they're making a TV series.
I think you may be right. I think it's a series. I got a little bit of that information in some of my notes, but again, it took them so long to make this. It's probably going to be a while before it comes out.
Hmm.
Even though, it's been 4 or 5 years since I released this. But besides, Goldberg and Seth Rogen were pretty busy working on The Preacher and some other, dark comic adaptations. Well, those two do a heck of a lot of good writing. Um, but this one's kind of hard. I think you have to buy it right now. You can go out there and get pieces of it on YouTube. As a matter of fact, the first 10 minutes of the film are on our YouTube playlist. I fully expect that site to get taken down. So, but as of right now, in that playlist, you can see the first 10 minutes of the movie, and it is hysterical. It was on, it wasn't on Disney. I want to say it was on HBO Max for a long time. They took it off, I think, at the beginning of the year, so it may pop back up again. It's exceedingly funny. But it's the idea. It is like Toy Story, only told from the point of view of food. And all the hot dogs want to do is get with the bun, because the buns are all female and the hot dogs are all male. So they just want to get with the buns, right? That's how the opening of this goes. And they're singing and they can't wait to be purchased and taken out into the world and get out of the supermarket, because there's this one supermarket employee who comes along with a trash can and throws expired food in it. They think that is the worst fate to happen at the opening of the film. What they don't realize is when people buy them and take them home, they're going to eat them. So it's this legendary journey of these hot dogs and these hot dog buns trying to escape being eaten. It's pretty dark, and they actually show some food being basically cut up and eaten. It's horrifying. Brenda and several groceries fall out of a cart, including a Jewish bagel named Sammy Bagel Jr., a Middle Eastern lavash named Kareem, a nasty and aggressive douche who, after his nozzle is bent on impact, swears revenge on Frank and Brenda. Of course, Frank is the name of the hot dog. So, seeking to verify Honey Mustard's warning, because Honey Mustard warned them that the Great Beyond is a lie. The Great Beyond is outside the grocery store. Frank leads Brenda, Sammy, and Lavish to the store liquor aisle. There they meet Firewater and learn that Firewater and his colleagues, the non-perishables, created the white lie of the Great Beyond to assuage the inhabitants' fear of being eaten. Frank vows to reveal the truth and is encouraged to travel beyond the store's freezer section to find proof. While Brenda, Sammy, and Lavish are brought to the Mexican food aisle by a bottle of tequila who is secretly working for Douche, until a lesbian taco named Teresa del Taco, who develops a crush on Brenda, helps them escape Douche. Yeah, the whole movie is like this. But it is this epic journey of food. It's so dark and so dirty and so exceedingly funny. So if you like dark humor, this one is probably for you. If you don't, you might want to give this one a pass. But some of the vocal cast: Seth Rogen, Michael Cera, Kristen Wiig, Edward Norton, David Krumholtz, Selma Hayek, Bill Hader, Craig Robinson, Nick Kroll, Scott Diggs Underwood, James Franco, Jonah Hill, Andre Home, Danny McBride, and Paul Rudd. But it is a tour de force of just humor. And, with the humor and the dark subject matter, you could give them a pass on the animation if it wasn't really, really good. But it really does play out like a Pixar movie, which is what they were going for. I think that's why it took them so long to make it. But it's incredible. The grocery store looks like a grocery store from the 1970s. I love that. I don't know why they did that, but with a lot of the fake wood grain stuff on things and stuff like that, it really does look like 1970s grocery store. It's beautiful and brilliant. Again, if you're not sure, I have included some YouTube playlists. There are little bits and snippets, and in some cases, full sections of films in our YouTube playlist for this episode, just because I wanted to give people a feel, as well as some ads and things like that. The last film in the list is Titan AE. You've seen
Hey,
Titan
one I've seen.
AE. Yeah. Titan AE is a 2000 American animated science fiction film directed by Don Bluth and Gary Goldman and starring Matt Damon, Bill Pullman, John Leguizamo, Nathan Lane, Janine Garofalo, and Drew Barrymore. Its title is a reference to a spacecraft central to the plot, with AE meaning after Earth. The animation of the film combines 2D traditional hand-drawn animation with the extensive use of computer-generated imagery. The film tells the story of a young man who receives a mission to save humanity and protect the giant ship that could create a new planet after a hostile alien species destroyed Earth. Along the way, he joins up with the ship's crew and their captain, who help him find the ship before the aliens can destroy it. The third and final project, produced by Fox Animation Studios, the film was theatrically released on June 16th, 2000 by 20th Century Fox in the United States. The film received mixed reviews from critics and made a loss at the box office. So just a background on the film. In 3028, a groundbreaking scientific project known as the Titan Project incurs the wrath of the Dredge, a hostile race of aliens whose bodies are of pure energy, who fear that it will allow humans to challenge them. Determined to wipe out humanity, the Dredge destroy Earth in a massive attack, forcing the surviving humans to evacuate and flee into space. Excuse me, sorry. It's pollen season, dear listeners. I really apologize, but everything is yellow here, and we're all coughing and snotty. So you'll have to excuse me. It is something that happens to the DFW area and everyone in it every year about this time. So during the evacuation of Earth, Professor Sam Tucker had researched on the Titan Project, leaves his young son Kale in the care of an alien friend Tech as he flees. Hold on a second. Roxy.
You're fine.
Somebody saw a cat in the backyard.
Oh, that's all right.
Before he leaves, he gives Kale a gold ring, promising that there will be a hope for humanity as long as he wears it. So yeah, planet Earth is destroyed pretty early on in this film, and most of humanity is on these, what they call drifts, which are collections of space stations and spaceships all connected together so the human race can live on. But the human race has become basically an endangered species. And the kid is working with this old alien that he was left with, who basically just kind of keeps track of it. Kale enlists the help of this group of smugglers, as it were, pirates, smugglers, what have you, and cargo merchants, and he's being chased by the Dredge the whole time, and he can't figure out why. It has to do with this ring that he's carrying. It's how you activate the Titan spaceship. So they get chased through these planets and try to find these other pieces to start the Titan and figure out this mystery. At one point, there's some backstabbing going on where the Dredge are paying people off to help them get rid of Kale. And he's just trying to basically fix his father's, what he feels is his father's mistake on working on the Titan in the first place. Because if they hadn't worked on the Titan, the Dredge never would have came and destroyed Earth. But it's really, really brilliant. I'm surprised it didn't do better than it did. Well, let's look at the voice cast. You've got Matt Damon, Bill Pullman, John Leguizamo, Nathan Lane, Janine Garofalo, Drew Barrymore, Ron Perlman, Tone Loc, Jim Brower, Christopher Scarbasio, Jim Cummings, Charles Rocket, Ken Hudson Campbell, Cy Chin, David Lander, and Roger L. Jackson. Um, so you've got a lot of big voice actor names and big regular names as well. Um, it was just a brilliant film. It was in development at 20th Century Fox since 1998, so they got this film made pretty quickly because it was released in 2000. What did you think about this one?
Um, it was forgettable for me. I
Oh
watched
yeah,
it once and I wasn't really overly excited about it.
didn't flip your switch, as it were.
No, it did not.
I really enjoyed it. Of the five films I that we were discussing today, this one is actually my least favorite of the five films, but it's okay. It's not great. I think the script could have been a little punchier. I agree because the things that they were dealing with, the destruction of the earth, forming a new planet, the backstabbing, some of the chasing around different planets and stuff. I thought it was a lot of fun. I think it was the dredge. The aliens that were against them that were made of pure energy, the dredge, they just weren't scary. They looked like they were infinitely defeatable. I think that may have been it. And it may not have been so much the way they were written as the way that they were drawn. You know what I mean? The dredge just weren't
Right.
intimidating. They could have been more intimidating looking.
Yeah.
And I think that was it. Their ships were intimidating. I like the ship design. And a lot of the design was really good on this. The animation was really good on this. But yeah, it was a little less than, stellar. Honestly, the Legend of Orin was far more interesting to me than this one was. Even though it had kind of an esoteric feel, it was almost like this film you would take Light Years or Gandahar and the Legend of Orin and kind of smash them together, and you got this because it had sort of an esoteric idea behind it. So it should be everything that those two films were and more, but it wasn't. Not a bad film. I don't think it's bad. I've seen it again. I watched it again recently in in researching these just so I got a feel for it. But but yeah, no, I'm with you. It's not great. It's not bad. Um, kind of a similar idea to some other films I've Pandorum. I thought was a similar idea. People escaping the destruction of Earth to form a new colony, but I thought Pandorum was done a little better. It was a lot more frightening anyway. But yeah, that is basically it for our five adult animation films that you guys should get out there and see. Again,
I'm really surprised you didn't have heavy metal in here.
I'll probably do heavy metal again. I kind of wanted to do heavy metal on its own
Yeah.
because I want to talk about heavy metal, uh, metal hurlant, which is
Hmm.
what the French call heavy metal, and Fact 2, heavy metal 2. I kind of want to
Hmm.
do those as a bookend piece because I think all the two films and the one series should all be told together because
Gotcha.
they're all basically from the same source, but and talk about the magazine as well.
Yeah. Gotcha. 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 Gotcha.
But yeah, I will do some more adult animation films. I think they need their own category, um, as it were. Just instead of just science fiction films, I'd like to do these as their own category
Hmm.
because they are different. Even though it's similar storylines, similar ideas, a lot of the same actors. Um, the animation film has a different or a different dimension to it. Not to make a pun, but there's you have to take into account the backgrounds and things like that, whereas you don't in a live action film. So yeah, I think I'm going to do some more of these later on. But these
Cool.
were I kind of picked examples in the genre. Um, I didn't do like a film de noir stuff. even though there are a lot of adult animation film noir pieces. We'll probably talk about those later.
Okay.
But thank you, sir. Appreciate you for going on that trip with me.
No, thanks for making that journey for us. Appreciate it as always.
Thank you, sir.
With that, we'll step over to the murdery side of the house.
Murder.
For today, I got my information off New England Historical Society, Wikipedia, All That's Interesting, and Medium, and this is the story of Jolly Jane Toppan.
Jolly Jane Toppan.
So Jolly Jane Toppan killed at least 31 people between 1880 and 1901, but doctors who hired her thought she was one of their best nurses.
Whoa. Oh, my God. Is this an angel of death?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, definitely not an angel. Only 12 murders were confirmed, but it's suspected she killed many more. She was one of the most beloved nurses employed at Cambridge Hospital. She earned her nickname Jolly Jane from her pleasant and upbeat personality and her friendliness towards her patients. By all accounts, she was also one of the best nurses at the hospital as well. Though most of her victims were her patients, there were several that were personal acquaintances, and this led to police to determine that her motive was something more than a fascination with the medical macabre and most likely a bout of insanity. So no, not an angel of death.
All right.
Today, psychiatrists say she was one of the most unusual serial killers in history. Like many serial killers, she had an unstable childhood. Unlike most female serial killers, she did it for the sexual thrill. For the most part, Toppan chose the feeble, the weak, and the elderly. And as her victims lay dying, she got a powerful erotic charge from holding and caressing them. She would load them up with painkillers, usually morphine or atropine, purely for the enjoyment of seeing what happened to their nervous systems.
She hit them with atropine?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
So as not to arouse suspicion, she would make fake charts and medicate them so that they would drift in and out of consciousness, never remembering what was happening to them. Jane Toppan couldn't resist the excitement and admitted she aspired to have killed more people, helpless people, than any man or woman who ever lived. So, she wasn't doing it to help people along the path. She was doing it because she got a thrill out of it.
Oh, wow. She wasn't alleviating suffering. She was causing suffering.
Right.
Wow.
She was born Honora Kelly around 1857 in Boston, the youngest of 4 girls in a poor Irish immigrant family. Her mother died of tuberculosis when she was a year old. Her father, Peter Kelly, a tailor, lost his mind and was said to have sewn his eyelids shut.
Oof.
Kelly, known as Kelly the Crack because he was kind of a crackpot in town, tried to raise the girls, but he was suspected of abusing them. In 1863, Kelly took 8-year-old Delia and 6-year-old Honora to an orphanage called the Boston Female Asylum in the city's South End. While there are no records in existence of how life was at the orphanage, the documentation from their acceptance in the asylum said they were rescued from a very miserable home. And the orphanage placed the girls in respective families when they turned 10. Delia supposedly became a prostitute and alcoholic, and another sister, Nellie, ended up in an insane asylum, then Kelly never saw his children again. Honora became an indentured servant to Mrs. Anne C. Toppan of Lowell, Massachusetts, and the Toppans passed her off as an Italian girl whose parents died at sea because of the stigma associated with the Irish. They also renamed her Jane Toppan, which sounded less Irish, but they never officially adopted her. She did well in school, and she had many friends, but got unattractively fat. Jane also displayed the earmarks of a sociopath, telling outrageous lies. Her father sailed around the world. Her sister married an English nobleman. Her brother was decorated at Gettysburg by Abraham Lincoln. At 18, Jane Toppan graduated from the Lowell High School, and the Toppans freed Jane from her indenture and gave her $50, but she stayed in the household as a servant. When Anne Toppan died, Elizabeth took over the house and continued to treat Jane as a servant, though with more kindness than her mother. Elizabeth married a church deacon, Orimal Brigham, who moved into the Toppan house, but some strain or dispute caused Jane to move out of the house that she had lived in for 20 years. At 33, Jane Toppan started her training as a nurse at Cambridge Hospital in 1887. There she earned her nickname Jolly Jane for her friendly, outgoing personality, as I said before. She liked to gossip, though, and celebrated the dismissal of students she didn't like. As time passed, however, Jane was found to gossip too much and lie profusely, often creating chaos among friends. She lied that the Tsar of Russia had offered her a nursing job, and she probably stole small things. She stole small things from them, and many of her fellow students grew to detest her. Once Toppan became close with the patients, she picked her favorite ones, and the patients were normally elderly and very sick. The hospital administration grew concerned over her obsession with autopsies, but didn't know she experimented with morphine and atropine on her elderly patients to see how it affected their nervous systems. One patient, Amelia Finney, had an operation in 1887. Afterwards, she said Jane Toppan gave her a dose of bitter medicine, causing her to lose consciousness. Jane climbed into her bed and kissed her all over the face, but something startled her and she stopped. The next morning, Finney decided it had all been a dream. And 14 years later, after Jane Toppan was arrested, Finney realized that it was definitely not a dream. Jane Toppan got a job at Massachusetts General Hospital, but lost it because she recklessly gave out opiates. Nevertheless, doctors recommended her as a private nurse to their wealthy clients. There, she claimed several more victims before being fired the following year. Still, she was never charged with any crimes, possibly because they weren't able to confirm that they suspected or believed that they were accidents.
Oh, wow.
Outside of her job, she guzzled beer, told dirty jokes, gossiped madly, and enjoyed turning her friends against each other. But to the doctors and their patients, she seemed a highly skilled professional, compassionate, and cheerful. Nurse Jane Toppan was earning $25 a week when women earned an average of $5 a week. She was also getting a sexual thrill, she later admitted, from climbing into bed with her patients as she murdered them. Free from the constraints of the hospital and the watchful eye of nurses and doctors, Toppan could experiment on patients as she pleased. She also began to kill more than just her patients, eventually moving on to people she took issue with in her personal life. She befriended her elderly landlord and his wife, but killed them one by one. She later explained they had gotten feeble and fussy and old and cranky. Her colleagues in nursing school remembered her saying there was no use keeping old people alive. After her landlord, Toppan killed another patient, an elderly woman who she had also been sent to care for. Then she killed a friend so she could take her place at a theological school, then several more ailing patients. In 1889, 70-year-old Mary McLear fell ill on a visit to Cambridge. Her doctor sent Jane Toppan, quote, one of my best nurses, to care for her, and then Jane poisoned Mary McLear to death. A month later, she killed a close friend, Sarah Connors, with strychnine so she could take her job as dining hall matron at St. John's Theological School in Cambridge, and she got the job, but it didn't last. The administration couldn't ignore complaints of her incompetence and missing money. Elizabeth Jane Toppan Brigham, Jane's foster sister, often invited her to come visit and stay in the house she grew up with, and Jane sometimes took her up on the invitation. Jolly Jane was vacationing in Buzzards Bay in the summer of 1899 when she targeted Elizabeth Brigham. Elizabeth complained of depression, and Jane invited her down to the Cape. One day she took Elizabeth to the beach for a picnic of cold corned beef, taffy, and mineral water laced with strychnine. She later said, quote, I held her in my arms and watched with delight as she gasped her life out. Jane Toppan then insinuated herself into the household of Elizabeth's widower, Ormel Brigham, because she wanted to marry him. Within 3 days, she killed Brigham's housekeeper, 77-year-old Edna Bannister. She took over from Edna and tried to impress Ormel with her housekeeping skills. Brigham made it clear he didn't want to have her as a housekeeper or a wife, and Jane decided to win his love by poisoning him and then nursing him back to health.
Wow.
That didn't work either, so she threatened to claim he'd gotten her pregnant, and then an enraged Ormel ordered Jolly Jane out of the house. She tried to commit suicide with an overdose of morphine but failed and went to the hospital. And upon her release, she visited an old friend, Sarah Nichols, who lived with her brother in Amherst, New Hampshire. By 1901, a Massachusetts state detective was following Jane. He suspected her of killing the entire family of Alden Davis. Jane had rented a cottage in Bourne from the Davis family, but she hadn't kept up with the rent. Alden Davis's wife, Mattie, came to Cambridge to collect, but Jane killed her with a cocktail of morphine and atropine. Then she moved in with the elderly Alden Davis to take care of him. And Jane Toppan took care of Alden Davis all right. She killed him and then two of his married daughters, Minnie Gibbs and Geraldine Gordon. Minnie Gibbs' father-in-law suspected the sudden deaths of his entire family had to do with foul play, and he consulted a toxicologist and got a judge to order Minnie's body exhumed. An investigation then revealed that she had died of morphine and atropine poisoning. Police arrested Jane Toppan in Amherst on October 29, 1901. She claimed she started her killing spree because a boyfriend dumped her when she was 16. A Lowell office worker gave her a promise ring, but moved to Holyoke, Massachusetts, and fell in love with someone else. She later said, quote, "If I had been a married woman, I probably would not have killed all those people. I would have had my husband, my children, my home to take up my mind." During her interrogation and ensuing trial, Toppan admitted to 31 murders, but said the number could be as high as 100.
Good God.
As word spread about her trial, patients from Cambridge came forward saying they had vague memories of being drugged by Toppan and that she had climbed on top of them during her hospital stays. And it was then revealed that Toppan revealed that she had got sexual pleasure from watching them hover close to death. An 8-hour trial took place in Barnstable County Courthouse. A jury deliberated for 27 minutes and found Jane not guilty of reason by insanity. After her trial, the New York Journal printed what was claimed to be Toppan's confession to her lawyer. The supposed confession said that she had confessed to 31 murder and indicated that she wanted a jury to find her sane so that she'd eventually be eligible for release from prison. In court, she also stood for herself and insisted on her sanity. She said she wouldn't be insane if she knew what she was doing and knew it was wrong, and she spent the rest of her life at Taunton State Hospital, dying on August 17th, 1938.
Well, she lived a long time.
Mm-hmm. Some attendants remembered her calling them into her room and smiling. Get some morphine, dearie," she said, "and we'll go out in the ward. You and I will have a lot of fun seeing them die." Toppan is often considered an angel of mercy. I don't agree with that. Type of serial killer who takes on a caretaker role and attacks vulnerable dependent, though she also murdered for seemingly more personal reasons in the case of the Davis family. It's possible Toppan was motivated by jealousy in the case of the murder of her foster sister. She later described her motivation as paralysis of thought or reason and a strong urge to poison. While Toppan's motives weren't completely clear, an article printed in the Hoosier State Chronicle shortly after she was arrested said she followed her victims as they died and thought that she could see their souls through their eyes. Toppan herself claimed during interrogations by police that she got a sexual thrill from taking patients near death, reviving them, and then taking back down again. Of course, given Jane's penchants for outrageous lies, who knows if this is true, and if it has anything to do with her crimes. And that is the story of Jolly Jane Toppan.
Wow. That's nuts.
Yes, she was.
Yes. Well, I mean, she spent the rest of her life in a state mental hospital, so.
Yeah, and I don't agree with the angel of mercy because she wasn't doing it to be merciful at all.
No. Apparently she was doing it maliciously.
Yes. Yes, she was. And she was batshit crazy.
Yes. Batshit crazy.
So thank you for taking that journey with me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for taking me on that journey.
Yep. That takes us to the end of our recording week. As always, you can find us at nerdandmurd.com. That's our website, where is our hub for everything you can find out about us. You can get more links to the items we talked about today, plus pictures, as well as links to our YouTube.
Yes, we do have a YouTube page where we put up videos that we think is funny and peeks behind the curtain, as well as a playlist for every nerdery subject we've had, going all the way back to the beginning.
Yeah, appreciate all the work you've done on that.
Oh, well, thank you, sir. We also do some TikToks and other things that we've got in there, just things that we think are funny.
Awesome. You can also find the link to our merchandise where if you wish to show off your nerdery murdery fandom, please do consider purchasing some items there. It does go towards the show, along with our Patreon, which you can link to from our page as well. Patreon is a way to support the show to help keep us going. There are costs associated with this show. So please do consider becoming a patron and help us with that. We do appreciate it.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. And last but not least, please don't forget to leave a 5-star review wherever you can. It really helps us and helps others find our content that may be looking for subjects that we are talking about. So with that,
I have been Zig with your nerdery.
and I'm Geoffrey with your murdery.
Cue the music.